Guess who's back? Back again. Mario and Patrick are back. Tell a friend. Guess who's back? Guess who's back? Guess.
Hey, feel I'm in the mood for a switch up. I hit the function, hit the rose till I hiccup. I hit the stage and leave with money that's a stick up.
That's right. The Mile High Meatheads have ended their hiatus. You are welcome. We are back. Patrick, I don't know if you're aware of this, but we are a week away from football officially starting. It has been a long and arduous offseason, and we have been trying to squeeze stories out of thin air. But thankfully, Pat, we don't have to do that anymore. Because this time next week, the Broncos will be in the building and we will have some real tangible things to talk about. But until that time, what I want to know from you right now, what are some camp battles you're interested in as we go into training camp?
Well, first of all, Mario, let me just say it's a pleasure to be back. I have missed
For everybody.
I have missed you tremendously, and I have missed this program tremendously. I thought you were going to say we were squeezing every last thing out of the NFL teat, which would be accurate, right?
Now, we are milking that cow dry, Pat.
Well, we absolutely are. Now, as far as camp battles go, Bree Macis and I were talking about this on Believe in the Broncos, and there's a couple camp battles that I really, really have my eyes on, and I think the two that really come to mind as being the most critical camp battles to watch. For me, the first one is definitely the wide receiver battle, because how many are we going to keep? I think this is a question that I've had every season that Sean Payton has been the head coach of the Denver Broncos, is how many receivers is he going to keep this year? Because every year in New Orleans, it was different, right? It kind of just depended on their personnel stylings and the type of offense that he wanted to run. So that's a massive question. What's going to happen with Cortland Sutton? All that stuff is valid, but now it's like, there's like this infusion of young talent in this room, right? Marvin Mims has a little bit of a breakout year. They use a high draft pick on Pat Bryant, and he's apparently got some juice. Michael Bandy was someone who last preseason was someone that we might see making the final 53. So
we all know you are the leader of the Michael Bandy fan club.
Look, there's a lot of talent in that room, and it's going to be interesting to see who is the odd man out. The other camp battle that I'm actually really, really interested in, because of the same kind of dilemma, is the safety position. Who is going to be that group? I'm pretty interested because they brought in a couple. They brought in a free agent. They brought in a couple other guys. They still have some carryover from last year. PJ Locke is back and healthy. So I'm kind of just excited to see how that room shakes out. Are they going to keep 4 or 5? Who's going to be the special teams ace? Jade A has to be thrown into this equation as well. Hufunga's they got to have injury insurance for Hufunga. So it's going to be interesting to see how that room shakes out. But I think those are the two that I'm keeping my eyes on. And then, of course, the quarterback camp battle, Sam Ehlinger versus Jarrett Stidham.
It's really compelling stuff. Yeah.
This is the camp battle that everybody should be keeping their eyes on. I mean, it's going to back up Bo Nix. I don't know.
This harkens back to the Trevor Siemian versus Paxton Lynch days. It's a very compelling storyline, except thankfully you're talking about the backup quarterback. For the first time, really, Pat, in what feels like a long time, there's no real sort of quarterback controversy or a situation where, we wish the quarterback position was maybe a little bit better. We're just going to gloss over the Russell Wilson years. And it feels good. if it compared to where we were last year when Bo Nix was this unknown entity, to now it's like he was a finalist for offensive rookie of the year, and rightfully so. And as long as he can continue that trajectory, we're in a much better place as fans and as a team than we were just a year ago. So let's start with the wide receiver position. And before we dig too much into it, I want to clarify something for everybody. Courtland Sutton obviously is the unquestioned wide receiver one. He's the leader in that room. He's going to be Bo Nix's guy. But here's what I think a lot of people don't realize, Pat. They'll look at the depth chart and they'll say, well, who's going to be wide receiver 2? Who's going to be wide receiver 3? And so on and so forth. Those are arbitrary labels that we're kind of telling you guys with. Because as you know, Pat, one week it might be Marvin Mims as wide receiver 2. Some week it might be Devon Bailey. Sometimes it might be Troy Franklin. Sometimes it might be Pat Bryant. I mean, you look back at last year, and I know you were the biggest Lil Jordan Humphrey fan on the planet and your other fan club that you were in charge of. Lil Jordan Humphrey was considered a starter. I mean, you went to the game, and they announced Lil Jordan Humphrey as a starter in pregame. But he was getting fewer snaps than the majority of the wide receivers. So if you're watching this, I don't want you to get bogged down onto the semantics of, who's wide receiver 2, 3, and 4, because that's going to vary week to week, right? It depends on the matchup and the game plan, what Sean Payton wants to do on that given Sunday or Thursday or Monday or Saturday. God, they pretty much play any day of the week now, don't they? But I digress.
They should play every day of the
week. Instead of the depth chart, right? Give me who you think is on the bubble. Maybe, one of these deeper guys that not a lot of people are talking about that have a good chance to make this team. Because you bring up an interesting point, how many wide receivers are they going to keep? Because they've got a lot. And I think a lot of people have forgotten that Trent Sherfield was one of the free agent signings that they brought in. And they didn't bring him in to be wide receiver 3, Pat. He'll get maybe some run at wide receiver. He does the dirty work. He's a great blocker. That was a free agent signing. That was a guy that they want to bring in to potentially be a gunner and to play teams. And so are you comfortable enough, Pat, as a special teams ace yourself and a special teams wunderkid, for Trent Sherfield to be one of the wide receivers that makes this team?
Well, I think that Sherfield makes the roster simply because he is taking over the Lil Jordan Humphrey role. And you talk about wide receiver 1, 2, 3 being arbitrary terms and stuff like that. And I think I see this game so differently than other people see it. I try to see it from the coaching aspect point, right? Where if I have 4 wide receivers on the field, I'm not calling them, wide receiver 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm calling them by their positions on the field. So I think that's where I see things so much differently than other people would see them. I think that Trent Sherfield, what he brings to this team is undeniable. Blocking skills, not only, in the run game, but on special teams. You mentioned him being a gunner. I think that he could fill that role fantastically. He's been a special teams guy in Minnesota before and in other stops. But his value, man, he's got great blocking technique on the edge. And really, when we look at what Sean Payton has talked about, wanting to improve upon, and it's the run game. We need to get better in the run game. And if you have wide receivers who don't block in the run game, hi, Troy Franklin, then you need to go find somebody who can do that. I think Troy Franklin has a chance to show that he can improve this offseason, but I don't necessarily think he's one of my bubble guys. I don't think that Trent Sherfield is a bubble guy either. So that leaves us with Courtland Sutton, Marvin Mims, Devon Bailey, Pat Bryant, Troy Franklin, Trent Sherfield. There's just 6. That's 6 already, right? Historically, Sean Payton keeps around 6 going into week 1. A handful of times in his career, I would have to find the tweet. I tend to tweet this out every season now. But only a handful of times in his coaching career has he kept 7 or more wide receivers going into week 1. So now that we know those 6 names, we have to look at the other ones, right? There's A.T. Perry, everybody's favorite practice squad wide receiver.
We had to bring up A.T. Perry on this show. Yep.
Michael Bandy. He's a guy who can do some things really, really well. But there's also the undrafted free agents. Jerwan Newton is somebody who I've talked about before, brother of Washington Commander Johnny Newton. He's a guy who I think is really intriguing. But also Joaquin Davis, Courtney Jackson, who has massive size, and Kyrese White. I think out of those names, the one guy that if they keep 7, the one guy that I want them to keep, okay, this is just for me, is Jerwan Newton. I think that he has a lot of the traits that Sean Payton would like in a Z receiver. I think he has a lot of traits that he would like from a guy in the slot. Really fun after the catch. But A.T. Perry knows the system. He's also a very big wide receiver, and that seems to be something that Sean Payton is wanting to go for. But Michael Bandy is a really solid route runner. He's really twitchy. He can run the option routes really well, and I think that is an area where we kind of want to see Bo Nix in this offense grow, because when Sean Payton was calling choice routes for slot wide receivers, man, those offenses were eating. So I think of those bubble guys, like those are the 3 guys that I would really keep my eye on as being potential roster guys. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't want Jerwan Newton on this team.
So let's flash over to the defensive side of the ball, and you had mentioned safety. The starters are pretty much ingrained, right? It's going to be Brandon Jones and Hufanga.
Yeah.
And then it's a little bit of a logjam. I think like what you brought up with PJ Locke, and I want to talk about that as well. Like the journey PJ Locke was on. Because we saw his play, like we saw how he played 2 seasons ago when he was filling in for Kareem Jackson, and he looked fantastic. Like he looked like he had arrived. He was very comfortable starting next to Justin Simmons, and part of me thought that Justin Simmons' departure was kind of the result of like the level of PJ Locke's play taking a little bit of a hit. And then we come to find out he had been dealing with this pretty serious back injury pretty much the entire season, had surgery immediately after that Bills game, is on the road to recovery. I guess we'll see how active he is in training camp. We'll see if it's one of those situations where maybe he starts on the PUP or the short-term IR, maybe. And it just depends on where he is personally with his recovery, because according to that report, this is an incredibly rare surgery. And having done this, like having worked on NFL players for over 10 years, I've never heard of an NFL player having this surgery. So it is a bit of an anomaly.
First of its kind.
Yeah, and they don't really have a measuring stick to go off of. And I talked to PJ Locke, and he said that his surgeon had kind of said, like, their recovery timeline is based off of normal people, not a prolific professional athlete who's in the top 0.00001% of humanity, because really that's what NFL players are. So I'm going to be interested to see where he is in his recovery, if we can kind of get back, or if he can get back to that 2023 version of PJ Locke, who was making plays, who forced a couple fumbles with the peanut punch. Seemed like he was a much rangier defender at safety. Are they going to work PJ in to that secondary? Because I think if he can obtain that level of play that he was at, and especially considering the fact that, Hufanga's had some injury stuff, is he going to be able to play all 17 games? You have to be able to have reliable guys to come off of the bench in this very complicated, convoluted Vance Joseph defense. And I think worst case scenario, like PJ Locke has already proven that he is a very good special teams player as well. So at the very worst, like, that he brings value there. And so then you start to talk about the other players who are, mainly the special teams guy, your guy, J.L. Skinner. Very difficult to keep a J.L. Skinner off of the team, because every single week it seemed like he was making a big special teams play. Does that mean that Delarian Turner-Yell is the odd man out? Or I'm spacing on his name, but it was the safety that they had signed who was the special teams ace in Carolina, to the point where
Sam
he
Franklin.
was a team. Yeah, where he was a team captain. So you are log jammed at that safety position. And like you said, is Barron going to get any run from the safety position? I'm sure they're going to move him around a lot. And maybe you could speak more to like the actual position that they want him to play, whether it be, like the star position or a little bit of a rover. So how do you see that position group shaking out?
Yeah, and this is kind of what I was talking about. It was like this is going to be an interesting camp battle. You kind of do have to take into account, like, is Hufanga gonna make it through the year? Excuse me. Is he gonna make it through the year? Like we have Hufanga, who is injury prone, we can say. Right, he's missed significant time over the last 2 years, but then they like, are we gonna bank that PJ Locke is going to stay healthy after, post surgery? Like, this is such an unknown. So it's kind of tough, right? Like, we want to keep guys on this roster who are going to play, meaningful snaps. And I think JL Skinner proved last season that he is a very smart and instinctual special teams player. You cannot let those guys go. You can't let them go. Now, bringing in Sam Franklin, I don't think that necessarily means death to JL Skinner's spot. I think it's just them kind of maybe adding some depth and insurance policies to the safety room overall. Sam Franklin has gotten reps on defense before, so does that give him a little bit of an edge over someone like Devon Key? Does it give him a little bit of edge over Deller and Turner Yell? Does it give him an edge over Keydron Smith? I think it does. He's got playing experience, but then that Jade Barron point is like, where are they going to put him? They can play him pretty much anywhere across the defense. Like, just don't put him at nose tackle, right? I think it's going to make a tough
that
time. Up. Yeah, thank God. Vance, if you're listening, don't even think about it.
Yeah, not even as a joke, Vance.
Watch week 1, they're gonna roll him out there.
Drop him back immediately into coverage. We're like, hey, DJ watches the show, and he did exactly what we told him not to do.
But I do think it's gonna add a little twist. But I think right now they're just preparing for camp. They're going to see how healthy Hufanga is. They're going to see how healthy Locke is, and just get these guys reps on special teams, and get them integrated. I think if anyone has the safest bet out of this room to make the roster, outside of Hufanga and Jones, of course, it is JL Skinner. I think he is, like, the fact that he played a little bit of defense last year too, like, and the fact that he was just such a key special teamer, so many big plays on special teams. This guy was flying all over the place, like multiple times. I mean, after games, we would, I would watch the film and then we would talk about stuff, and it was like every week I was like, dude, like, you got to see JL Skinner on this play. Like, you look at where JL Skinner is, like, he's just popping up all over the place. So I think he probably has the safest bet to make this roster. But I really want to see PJ Locke recover from this injury, come back and play, because he was putting on some very good things on tape before the injury. And last season, it was just like, we could watch and we were like, something's not right. Like, something
you could tell he wasn't playing like himself.
No, and then teams are like picking on him. Like, the Buffalo game was really bad, and like you could just kind of tell he was not comfortable. Like, it wasn't even like he doesn't know his assignment. It was just like the physicality of having to like flip his hips and like open up. Like, he just did not look comfortable playing. So I'm excited to see how he has recovered. I'm excited to see what he can do in camp. I think if he's healthy, having a room of like Hufanga, Jones, Locke, Skinner, and hell, let's say Franklin makes it, right? I'd feel pretty good. I'd feel pretty good about that.
Well, it shouldn't be overstated either. Like, they drafted a punter with a big leg, Pat, and that was one of the most consistent things we heard. And obviously, the only thing that we know right now is that we know very little, but consistently, Crawshaw, right? Am I pronouncing that
Oh
correctly?
yeah. Oh
The
yeah.
Thunder from down under,
Man.
bigger leg than the Broncos have had in a punter in quite some time. And that's all well and good, but if you don't have players that can actually cover said punts, then he's out kicking his coverage. And I think that's where the special teams kind of roster, like the guys that are going to play special teams, it's even more important now. So if you have a punter with a bigger leg that is putting, an extra 5-10 yards on the ball, you need to make sure that guys are getting down there quicker, that they're making plays as the ball is being received. If he's kicking the ball further, sometimes that means that the return man has a little bit more space, or you have a little bit less time to save the ball from going into the end zone. So the importance of like teams, especially punt coverage, cannot be overstated, especially with a rookie punter where we don't really know what to expect, but we've heard a lot of good things. Now,
Yeah.
you brought up Barron, and that I really want to focus on that, Pat. So let's go back to the draft. Everybody pretty much had it cemented that this team either would try and trade up for Ashton Genty, sell the farm and go get him, get the difference maker. Obviously, they didn't want to go up that high, but they did make the call according to reports. And outside of Genty, it was like, all right, go Omari and Hampton, go Travion Henderson, trade back and take Travion Henderson. And in fact, that was the plan, Pat. They had a trade in place with the New York Giants, who obviously came up to get Jackson Dart. They were wanting to leapfrog the Steelers, who picked after the Broncos because they thought, well, the Steelers need a quarterback. They might be in on Jackson Dart. They're trying to leapfrog the Steelers. The Giants are. And so the Broncos had this trade basically in place. And if Jade A does not fall to them at 20, they're trading back. And the report was that they were going to go after Travion Henderson and then Mason Taylor, later on in the second round. That was their blueprint. And then Jade Barron slowly started falling down the board. And that's one of those guys that they considered to be can't miss. There were only, I think they only had about 10 blue chip prospects, which are guys that have like definitive first round grades.
Yep.
And he was the only one there. And they were incredibly high on him. So this was a situation where they did not think that he would be there. And Pat, I want to point out, like, this is much different than the Shane Ray situation. Okay. When they drafted Shane Ray the year before they won the Super Bowl, they did not have a plan for him. It was a situation where, okay, the draft board is falling. Shane Ray, I think, got busted with weed like a week before the draft. He was a projected top 10, in some circles, top 5 picks. Fell all the way to the Broncos at 20-something. They ended up taking him, even though they had Von Miller, even though they had DeMarcus Ware. They ended up signing Shaq Barrett as an undrafted free agent, of course, and that was a logjam. So this situation is not similar to that because George Payton actually knows how to build a roster, unlike the people that were in place back then. It's a little bit of a difference. We won't get bogged down into the details, but this is not like that situation where they panic drafted Jade Barron. And there were a lot of local syndicates, Pat, that had a problem with that pick because they thought that it was a panic pick. And it could not have been more opposite than that. They had a plan in place. There was the one guy that they said, if he falls to us, we are not going to do this trade. So from the beginning of the draft, they knew what they were going to do, and they executed it perfectly. So the question now, Pat, because of the essence of Barron and his capability to play all over the field, he can play the slot, he can play the outside, he can play a little bit of safety, you can move him all around. But my question is, who would you rather him supplant if it's up to you between Riley Moss and Jaquan McMillian? And part of this question that you have to consider, where do you get a big enough boost? Let's just assume, Pat, that Barron is better than both Moss and McMillian as he steps onto the field. Then you have to consider the parity. It's like, well, how much better is he, if at all, than these guys? Where does he stand to make the biggest difference? Is it inside or outside? So if you're running the defense, you're Vance Joseph, what are you doing with Jade Barron?
A litany of things. I'm doing a litany of things with Jade Barron.
You're not putting him in a box, except
No.
for the times that you put him in the box.
Listen. Well, so no, I think he could very well play in the box. Look, listening to George and Sean Payton talk after day one, it was first like your what you said about the trade. Very true. Like they talked about that, like, oh, we had a trade in place for, second round, blah, blah, blah. But then what Sean Payton said about Jade Barron, we're not going to pigeonhole him. We're not going to do that. We're not going to limit him position wise. He is going to play where we need him. And I have this conversation with my high school players pretty much every day. Well, coach, I think I'm a wide receiver, or I think I'm a running back, or I think I'm a blocking back, blah, 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 blah. No, you're whatever I tell you are. I need you to understand this game and like our scheme and what we're doing from multiple areas, because that is going to help you succeed as a football player. They would be doing Jade Barron a disservice by saying, oh, well, he's only taking over for Riley Moss on the outside, or he's only taking over for Jaquan McMillan in the slot. Don't do that to him. Let's not do that to him. I will say the one player, to answer your question, the one player that I think should be worried about potentially losing his starting spot on this defense is Jaquan McMillan. Jade Barron was very, very good as a slot defender. He was also very, very good as a cornerback, out wide. I don't think that necessarily means that Jaquan is going to be off the team, or they, try and trade him or whatever. I also don't think this means anything negatively for Riley Moss. I think that this is just adding another bullet in the chamber and aiming it directly at the Kansas City Chiefs, the Los Angeles Chargers, the Oakland Raiders. I'm not going to call them Vegas, but it's also aiming it right at Buffalo. It's also aiming it right at every single other team in the AFC and in the NFC and saying, are you feeling lucky? Are you feeling lucky, punk? I've got multiple in the chamber now. Signing Hufanga, signing Greenlaw, drafting Barron. They are just loading up this roster because they saw last season, if one guy goes down with an injury, we don't necessarily have the depth to remain competitive, and that's what they're doing now. I think that Jaquan McMillan did literally everything he could in the slot last year. He was the most targeted slot player in the NFL last season, which means he also gave up the most receptions from the slot last year. And he also gave up the most yards from the slot last year as a slot defender. It's tough, but it's also like, we got to be better, because when we had the greatest defense in team history, some would say the league history, there was a certain
Mario would say that. He sure would.
There was a certain player who played in the slot who was definitively one of the best defenders in the NFL and redefined the position. There's no excuse now. If you're good enough, you're good enough. And you have to be able to make plays. Now, McMillan did make plays at times, but he also gave up a lot. And I think that is where, we as fans need to take a step back and be honest with ourselves and say, yeah, I like this guy a lot. Nothing against him personally, but when we're talking about wanting to win a Super Bowl championship, we have to elevate the level of play. And so maybe this pick lights a fire under Jaquan's ass. And it's like, you got to be better. We got to be better. You know, I appreciate his work and his work ethic, but like, we still got to be better. I think there is no doubt in my mind that Riley Moss is a NFL cornerback. And if you still think otherwise out there, I'm looking at all of you. If you still think otherwise, you're wrong. Like, you're just
you don't know
wrong. This
you
guy
don't know
has this
Learn
guy has been absolutely balling, and it has opened up so many things for Vance Joseph in this defense to not just say, okay, like, we have a blue chip guy on one side of the ball. Now we got to worry about this guy's going to get targeted a bunch. Well, he was targeted a bunch and he balled out. He did fantastic. So I think where
it was a recency bias, Pat. They
Yeah.
rushed him back against Cincinnati, who have the best wide receiver 2 in the entire NFL, and he got picked on a lot, and it was deliberate. Yeah, he was clearly not ready to be back. And so, like, we don't want Bronco fans to like focus just on that performance at the end of the year. No. Look at the body of work. Because if you remember, Pat, this time last year, one of the discussions that we had in terms of like the camp battle, it's who's going to be the cornerback on the other side of Patrick Surtain. Was it going to be Damari Mathis? Was he going to bounce back after a brutal sophomore season? Was Riley Moss going to step up and be that guy? They had just signed Levi Wallace, who we thought was a serviceable quarterback. Oh, sorry. I said his name and I got a lot of really bad indigestion. Felt like my esophagus shortened. But now we look back at it and it's like, oh, no shit. Obviously, Riley Moss was by far the best selection. But we didn't know what we didn't know back then. We thought that this was going to be an open battle, and really it was kind of open and shut. So I want you all to keep that in mind. It's like they knew Riley Moss was going to be the guy, and he solidified it. And you assume that he's going to take that next step and build on what he did last season and be even better. And I got news for you. Having the quality of defensive line and edge rushers that they have, finally having like an off-ball linebacker who is a difference maker and not just a spot filler, having a guy like Hufanga now in the rotation, that is going to help elevate the game, really, of every single person on the defense. Yep. Patrick Surtain is already the best defender in the entire NFL, and if you don't believe me, go watch the clip of Ocho Cinco trying to teach the best receivers in the NFL how to get open against Patrick Surtain. They are terrified of going up against him. They weren't talking about Sauce Gardner. They weren't talking about Jair Alexander. They weren't talking about Jalen Ramsey. They weren't talking about anybody but Patrick Surtain because he is the standard bearer. And what did they do, Pat? They made his life even easier going into this offseason. So have realistic expectations and expect that Riley Moss is going to continue to get better. Just like you should expect that every member of that defense is going to continue to get better because it's another year in that system. It's another year playing with those guys. And in case you haven't noticed, once VJ got away from the Fangio defense he was kind of tasked with running his first year here after the infamous 70-20 game, that whole year we know the defense was not on par. Once he was handed the keys and said, all right, BJ, this isn't working, you go do your thing. That was when the tides turned and the Broncos became the perennial top 5, top 3 defense that we see. Yep. And speaking of expectations, Pat, going into this season, and we'll wrap with this, where do you see this team in terms of the win-loss column? Because if you remember last season, you and I were the only ones who really said, if everything goes right, this is a 10-win team. And they called us madmen. They called us homers. They called us fanboys. They called us meatheads.
They called us heathens.
Pretended like that was some sort of an insult. But one thing I want to point out before you answer, I think the floor needs to be 10 wins because with a noticeably worse roster last season, this team won 10 games. Here's the problem with that. They did not have a signature win. They could have had it in Kansas City, but they didn't. They lost to the Chargers twice. They lost to the Bengals. They got boat raced by the Ravens. They got beat up by the Seahawks and the Steelers earlier in the season. Not one of their wins, and there were 10 of them. There were a lot to choose from. You can't go back to any one of those wins and say, that was the win. That was the win where they really proved it and solidified. Now, if you want to talk about the Falcons game, sure, but they were completely reeling at that point. Atlanta was not the same team when the Broncos played them as they were the first third of the season.
Yeah.
You beat up on the Panthers, you beat up on the Saints. They maybe the Bucks, maybe you could argue that since the Bucks won their division and they were a good game, you go into Tampa Bay, you stomped them. But I don't think that you can hang your hat on that. Their schedule this year, Pat. Yeah. Right. Their schedule this year, from what we've seen, and we don't know until we know, it's much more difficult than last season. Mm-hmm. You're not going to be able to coast on a terrible NFC South anymore. You're going to have to play much better teams and a much rougher schedule. So I think that even though the floor needs to be 10 wins because that's what you accomplished last year with the worst roster, what you all as fans have to understand is it is much more of an uphill climb, even though this team is marketably better than they were last year. You have to split in the division. You cannot get swept by the Chiefs. You cannot get swept by the Chargers. You can't lose a game to the Raiders. I don't care that they're improved. They're still not there. They're still in a rebuilding and no man's land process. You have to be over 500 in your division, and you're going to have to win some games that you're not supposed to win. Because, Pat, there was not a game last year they won where you're like, oh, they were not supposed to win that game, and they pulled it out anyway. That has to change this season if they want to not just make it back to the playoffs, but host a playoff game and win a playoff game and be considered a contender.
What do you mean? The last game of the season, Mario? They beat the Kansas City Chiefs. They weren't supposed to win that game.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, because the Chiefs let them win because they didn't want to play the Bengals in the playoffs, right? Yeah, I remember I heard all about that.
They didn't want the Bengals in the playoffs.
I'm sorry to say, but beating the Chiefs C team with Carson Wentz, and then I think their third string quarterback ended up getting some run as well.
He sure
yeah. I mean, that's what you're supposed. That was a preseason game for the Chiefs, and that was a do or die game for the Broncos. And
that was a definitive win. Yeah,
but it was still nice beating the tar out of the Chiefs. That was fantastic.
It felt good.
I don't care what the situation was.
It is no, I won't say that. No, I think you're on the right track there. Floor for me is 10 wins. I think that this team improved in a lot of areas. The jury is still out on the run game. I think that is going to be the biggest factor for how I really see this team. From training camp to preseason, if the run game is noticeably different, I'm going to go to my ceiling, which is 12 wins. I think that the high end for this team is 12 wins. And that's with splitting with Kansas City and splitting with the Chargers and splitting with the Raiders. That 12 wins. It's a tough schedule, and they have to travel quite a bit. The London game, and then coming right back and having to play a game essentially on a short week. It's not a short week in the term.
It'll feel like a short week. It'll take a couple days to shake off the jet lag for sure.
Hey, but
what are the odds that Russell Wilson is actually the starting quarterback for that game after London? Because that's when the Giants come to town.
3%. 3%.
You had to go 3. That's fantastic.
I did.
As much as I would love to see this team beat up on Russell Wilson, I mean, God, they would sack him 8 times with this defensive front. Yeah, I think that's Jackson Dart time.
Well, I think it might be Jameis Winston time. I think it's Jameis Winston time for sure. But no, I think the ceiling is 12 wins. The floor is 10. So my gut feeling is saying 11 wins for this team. It just kind of depends on how they play out the that stretch, because you've got Philly and then you're going to London and then you got to come right back and you play. I mean, it is nice that they have 2 games at home after that, like the Giants and the Cowboys both at home. So that's pretty nice, but it's going to be so dependent on how this team handles the bye and how this team handles the travel. And I see it as I watched last season and they kind of hit their stride. Like you could kind of tell that they were getting in a groove during that first Kansas City game. And I swear to God, if we get another one of those games, like this is the thing that kind of pisses me off about all these conversations that's going on about Bo Nix on social medias. Like, oh, is Bo Nix a game finisher? Is Bo Nix Bo Nix from weeks 10 to 18? Bo Nix threw 35% of his throws behind the line of scrimmage. Like,
oh, you mean when they couldn't run the ball and they started throwing to Marvin Mims? Or like, are we not watching film at all?
Did we not watch the games? Like this, like, did we not just watch the games? Did we not watch this guy? If it wasn't for
this is why nerds have no place in football.
If it wasn't for, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think
they don't. Burn them all and fire them into the sun.
There's a time and a place for analytics, and that's fine. But when you're
maybe Zach Seegers could talk to us about analytics and how Geno Smith is the top 10 quarterback and Bo Nix is barely top 20. Let's go to Zach Seegers over at KOA to tell us why Bo Nix isn't that good and Geno Smith is the second coming of Jesus Christ.
It's like,
we don't have Zach. What a shame.
I get so irritated with some of these.
Zach's a nerd.
I get so irritated with some of these takes because it's like, did you not watch him nearly dethrone Kansas City in Kansas City? Did you not see that?
Right, and everything that exactly what he was supposed to do. That was the best 2-minute drill that you could have seen.
Are you kidding me?
Was executed perfectly.
Like, oh, he doesn't have the traits. What are you talking about? Like,
the longest air completion on the season, but he doesn't have the traits. Is hysterical to me.
Finished his rookie season, and God forbid somebody says, yeah, like based on what he did in his rookie year, he could be a really good quarterback in the league.
Oh, he did it without a run game, Pat. He did it without a tight end to throw to.
So you think,
what are we talking about?
You think that Bo Nix is better than Patrick Mahomes? No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if you watched this guy fucking play and you understood like those things that you said, no run game, no like security blanket tight end. Gee, I wonder what things Patrick Mahomes had in Kansas City during his rookie season. The one game that he played during his rookie season, or let's just talk about the second season after he got to sit behind Alex Smith, a seasoned veteran, and had Andy Reid coaching him up week after week. He had Travis Kelce, he had a run game, he had Tyreek Hill, he had all of these things, and you're still talking about like how no other quarterback can have the same traits. Motherfucker, he plays like Brett Favre. What are we talking about?
What is talking about that? Like who? What? Which elite quarterback checked down more than any quarterback in the entire league, percentage wise?
This was the part that killed me. This was the part that killed me. What are we doing? This was the part that killed me. Bo Nix doesn't have pocket presence. Bo Nix runs himself into more pressures and sacks than anyone in the league. Wrong. Do you know who actually ran themselves into the most pressures and sacks in the league? It was the guy that you're slobbing on his knob for. Like, holy shit, guys. Let's not fucking overthink this. If you think that Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen don't share any traits as quarterbacks, I think you need to start reevaluating how you watch this game. Quarterbacks and players all around the league can share similar traits, but also still be on different talent levels. That's okay. I think that this season, we are going to see a different version of Bo Nix than we saw last season. And I really hope that the people who had that energy this offseason and last season keep that same energy going into this season. Second year in the same offense, new weapons, hopefully a better run game. But there is one trait that this kid My God, you cannot deny it. This kid will do everything he can to win a football game. And we saw it in Kansas City last year. We saw it throughout the second half of the season when he was playing with a broken back.
Broken freaking back.
What? Stop with the nonsense. It's okay to temper your expectations, and I'll temper mine right now. I think he's fine. He's not greatness yet. Okay. Could he get there? Maybe. Do you guys remember Josh Allen his first couple seasons?
Pretty.
Do you remember Josh Allen those first couple seasons?
People in Buffalo were writing him off. I went to the game in Buffalo and what was it, 2020? No, it was 2019. It was Drew Lock's rookie year. And I think Josh Allen was in his second year as like his first full year as a starter. And I talked to a lot of Bills fans. They were not big fans of Josh Allen. They're like, yeah, he's fine, but he's not the guy.
Do you remember when people were saying Lamar Jackson couldn't throw? Do you remember that?
You mean like how they wanted him to be a running back or wide receiver?
That's 2 seasons ago. They're still saying, oh, he can't throw. He's not a quarterback. Like, bro, stop. Like, you guys sound like you're talking on ESPN.
God, they want to dig their heels in. And then the whole, everything surrounding Bo Nix, like all of this unmitigated hate that he gets. And then honestly, like you as fans and we as fans shouldn't care as much as we do because Bo Nix doesn't give a shit about all of that. But what it is these pundits pegged him as a check down artist. They didn't have him as like a first round quarterback. They did not think that he was that good of a quarterback. And he proved them all wrong. And instead of coming out and just saying, I was wrong on my evaluation. I thought that Bo Nix was da-da-da-da-da. Turns out that I'm wrong and that's not the case. Instead, they want to dig their heels in even more and not give credit to a rookie quarterback who had to carry an offense who, again, did not have a security blanket and a tight end, like a serviceable tight end, and he did not have any semblance of a run game. And you don't want to give where credit is due because of your pre-draft analysis on him. You're a coward.
I get so worked up about it, and like I don't want to seem like I'm a homer. I'm just I'm trying to give you an honest evaluation. The whole like thing with him at Oregon, like, oh, he can't he's thrown behind the line of scrimmage. I don't know. Have you ever thought that maybe this is their offense? Like this is the same conversation that we had with Justin Herbert after his senior year at Oregon. Oh, well, why didn't he throw the ball downfield more? I don't know. Maybe because the offensive coordinator is calling specific plays and the quarterback is just going out there and executing at a really high clip. Oh my God. It's almost like the offensive coordinator is calling the plays and the quarterback is just running the fucking plays. It's the same thing. Last season, we saw Bo Nix blow up at Sean Payton. For why? Because Bo Nix didn't take the throw over the middle of the field. But what did he do on that play? He tried to throw a fucking touchdown and the wide receiver dropped it. Like, he did the right thing. And his coach said, hey, why didn't you do this? And Bo Nix said, oh, okay, you want me to throw first down? Oh, that's fine. I was just trying to put fucking points on the board. He's the guy. Stop trying to like make your narrative stick. It's fine if he outplays your expectations. And you know what? I'll finish with this. It's okay sometimes to say, I was wrong. And this guy can play. It's not that hard, folks.
It's not that hard. It's really not. As we wrap up, what a fantastic way to end. Man, it is so good to be back. And again, you all are welcome. I know you guys missed us. I know you've been frantically searching for a really good Broncos podcast. And so you're welcome for us being back. And we will be back. I know we weren't live tonight, but we will be back live next week. And for the foreseeable future, we're going to take you through training camp. And we got some more people to call out, Pat, but we just didn't have the time today. Real quick, the winner of the throwback Bo Nix jersey is Jake Goats. I think that's how you pronounce it. It is at Broncos News 303. Congratulations, Jake. You are the proud new owner of an extra large Bo Nix throwback Jersey. And before we get out of here, we would like to thank our sponsor, Alloy Fitness. Alloy, looking good, feeling great, and living life to the fullest. With a lot of different locations all across the Front Range area, Alloy focuses on a small group setting where you are all going through a really cool, good workout, and you get the blood flowing, and hell, you go enough times, maybe at some point you'll look like me and Pat.
Wow.
Alloy Fitness. It's not a cult like CrossFit. My name's Mario Vitanzi. That handsome bastard is Patrick Chiotti. This is Altitude Adjustment. We're back, and we'll see you next week. Bye, everybody. We love you. Bye-bye.
Hey, feel I'm in the mood for a switch up. I hit the function, hit the rose till I hiccup. I hit the